Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever video on the Eli Hoover Sports Experience channel. We're going to be talking about a lot of different sports here. This is basically just going to be all the sports I like. If I find some news in the sports world that I want to talk about, I'm going to post it on here. And for this first video, I have four main things I want to get to. If we go off track and end up talking about something else, well, that's just how it's going to be. But today, we have some IndyCar schedule news. The IndyCar schedule came out earlier this week, and not a lot of people are happy about how it turned out. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about the spring football merger that happened earlier this week. The USFL and the XFL are no longer going to be separate leagues. They are going to be one league all by themselves. Hold on, we're getting the frame. There we go. One league all together. Probably the National Spring Football League, but we'll get to that in a second. And then one of my favorite things of all time, FCS football. I went to SIU for 2 years, so I'm a huge FCS football guy. And there's a lot of controversy over how things get voted on, so I'll bring my 2 cents into that. And then we'll have the debut of the Eli Hoover Sports Experience Top 25. And then I have a thought on Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. I know everybody has a thought on that. I promise mine is quick. And I just had a quick thought I wanted to get out there, but we'll leave that to the end, and we'll talk about the actual sports things first, I guess is the way to put that. Before we continue, if you guys think that sounds like something you want to keep hearing about, go ahead and click that like button. That's the one that's a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button. That's the one that says subscribe with the YouTube logo right next to it, big red button. And then go ahead and press that bell too. That's for notifications. You get notified every time I go live or every time I post a video. If you want to get more of that stuff, we'll get into other sports as we go along on this channel. But this is just what I feel is newsworthy for me personally at this moment in time. So let's get into it, guys. The IndyCar schedule came out earlier this week, and two things got noticed right away. Milwaukee Mile is finally back. People have been talking for years and years and years. Why isn't Milwaukee on the schedule? Why is this not a thing that's happening? And not only is it back on the schedule, there are 2 races at the Milwaukee Mile. So Iowa is not the only oval doubleheader on the schedule anymore. Milwaukee Mile, it's going to be August 31st and September 1st. I have my notebook of notes right here. So yeah, there's 2 races at the Milwaukee Mile, but for the Milwaukee Mile to get on the schedule, it seems we had to deal with the loss of Texas. Texas was huge for being the first oval on the schedule. It was almost a mini practice session for the Indy 500 to see if your oval package is good enough to compete at the Indy 500, and now the Indy 500 is the first oval on schedule. They didn't move Milwaukee in that spot. They didn't move Iowa up. They didn't move St. Louis up at all. So the Indy 500 is going to be the first look for everyone for their oval package. And so it's going to be interesting to see if we see the same level of racing at the Indy 500. If we see people being more conservative that first week of practice because they have no idea what their oval car looks like, or is it we're going to see the same type of preparation and just kind of throw themselves to the fire and hope it works out the same way it normally does. So I think that's something that's really interesting. As a St. Louis resident, I'm really disappointed that St. Louis is no longer the last oval on the schedule. Milwaukee Mile is that last oval now. It's right before the season finale, the Streets of Nashville. Worldwide Technology is on that Saturday now. It's August 17th, about 2 weeks before. Oh, I'm trying to do my math here real quick. Sorry, 3 weeks. It's 2 weeks before Portland. But it's on August 17th, and that is a Saturday. So, on a good note, that means it's probably a night race again, and we've heard multiple drivers talk about how much they want that to be a night race. Alexander Rossi on his podcast Off Track with James Hinchcliffe and Tim Durham. Fantastic piece of media every Thursday. Check that out if you guys don't already. But he talked about before this week. this year's St. Louis race at Worldwide Technology Raceway that it's always a better race, at least to him, when it's a night race. A lot of temperature stuff plays into that. So no times have been released for anything other than Indy 500. So since it's on a Saturday now, fingers crossed that that's a night race. It's a lot cooler vibe in the stands just because you have the lights, on you. And so it'll be interesting to see if they do in fact bring the night race back. I'm sure everyone will be very excited about that. So a lot of people are upset about the fact that there's no Texas. I'm personally not that upset about it, but I do have an issue with the schedule, and I have that issue because Texas isn't there, basically. So looking at the first part of the schedule, we have March 10th, the opener, Streets of St. Pete. St. Pete is the opener again. It deserves to be. It's always a fantastic race. And then 2 weeks later, we have the Thermal Club $1 Million Challenge. Not a points race. Not a points race, but it was there to make that St. Pete to Texas 1 month gap a little bit more bearable. You have that 2 week interval there in the beginning. Not a points race, but somebody gets $500,000 and then a charity gets $500,000, I believe, is the way that works out. And it's something for everybody to watch while they're waiting for the next race. But then we got the news Texas wouldn't be on the schedule, and instead of something moving up, another oval moving that spot, or even just moving up the Long Beach race, instead Long Beach is about where it normally is. Long Beach is on April 21st. So normally we have a month. Now it's a month and 11 days. If I'm doing my math right here, a month and 11 days, April 21st is the second points race. Now, it's a little bit more bearable with that $1 million challenge, but even with the $1 million challenge, that's still a month. March 24th to April 21st, it's a month in between track time for a lot of IndyCar teams. And so the $1 million challenge ended up being a saving grace, but not nearly as much as IndyCar was hoping, because they don't have that spot on this calendar filled anymore. Now they still have that month gap, but now it's a month and a half in between points races. So that's one big thing for me that I don't really care for on the schedule. And the other thing for me is the TV. The TV is less NBC races, more USA races, and now there's 2 Peacock exclusive races. So Toronto has always been a Peacock exclusive. I think it's kind of weird that it's like, oh, it's the Canada one, we're gonna put that on Peacock. I'm sure that's not the thought process, but it kind of feels like that from somebody who has never been in a TV room. So Toronto is a Peacock race again. And the first Milwaukee Mile race is going to be a Peacock exclusive as well. And Milwaukee doesn't get an NBC race. That first one on August 31st is going to be a Peacock exclusive. And then September 1st, the next day, that Sunday, is going to be on USA only. And so, breaking it down real quick, including that Thermal Club $1 million challenge, 10 races will be on NBC. 9 of the points races will be. And then we have a huge jump in USA races. 6 USA races compared to 3 last year. And like I said, 2 Peacock exclusive races compared to just Toronto last year. And so, like I said, 10 NBC races including Thermal compared to last year. It was 13 NBC races. Let's see, Worldwide Technology, I know that was an NBC race last year. That got bumped to USA. Portland is USA now. Let's see here, Streets of Detroit, that's always a USA race. Laguna Seca, I think that might be the other one that got moved. I'd have to look into a little bit more. Long Beach, actually I think Long Beach is the one that got moved because that's normally on NBC, because it's such a, you hear drivers talk about how big of a race that is. James Hinchcliffe made a point in the 100 Days to Indy documentary to talk about it being the second most important race for a lot of racers. Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi are both from that area, so they also with it being a big race for a lot of people and them being from California, I shouldn't say from that area, them both being from California, that's big for them because it's kind of like their hometown race as well. So it's kind of surprising to me to see that get bumped to USA. But TV executives know what they're doing. There's a reason they have that job and not me. That's kind of my life motto for decisions I don't like. There's probably a reason behind them that I'm not smart enough to understand. So we'll check that out. That's my rant over for the IndyCar schedule. What is your one favorite thing about the IndyCar schedule this year? What is your least favorite thing about the IndyCar schedule this year? Drop it below in a comment. I want to hear all of you guys' opinions. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit more if this gains some traction. We'll see with that. But we're going to move on a little bit here, and we're going to talk about that USFL XFL merger. Now, almost nobody knows anything yet. But like I said earlier, I'm a St. Louis native, and so if one thing happens out of this, I want it to be this. St. Louis better still have a team playing games in St. Louis every other week, or half the games they play, however many they end up playing. So, pretty much all of this information is from Howard Balzer, who does a great job, Sports Illustrated. Go phnx.com, and he has a SiriusXM show, a Hall of Fame show on SiriusXM. He has said that it's most likely going to be 6 teams from each league. And you would imagine one of the Houston teams is probably going to get axed just because it doesn't make sense to have 2 teams in Houston. I have no idea what the other 3 would be. You would imagine St. Louis would stay alive because it was by far the biggest draw for either league. St. Louis pretty much carried XFL's attendance numbers. USFL, since they were doing the hubs, they didn't have great attendance numbers. So you'd imagine St. Louis would stick around purely for that, much less the fact that they were pretty solid on the field. But that brings me to my second point. Once again, Howard Balzer. Follow him for pretty much all football stuff. If you're an Arizona Cardinals fan especially, he is a big Arizona Cardinals guy. That's where most of his writing goes to. But even for spring football stuff, he normally has some pretty good information. Go check him out on Twitter or whatever social media site you're on now. Sorry, it's X. But you get my point. Howard Balzer says, more than likely right now they're going to do hubs, which I don't understand. I really don't. I take that back. I kind of understand it. But watching the USFL for the last 2 years even, I've been so confused watching them brand them as these cities' teams. Like the Pittsburgh Maulers, the Michigan Panthers, and just like all those teams. Like some of them are actually playing in those cities, but it doesn't make sense to bring them as cities and then be like, oh no, sorry, we're playing in Canton. We're going to be nowhere near where we say we're from. And it's frustrating watching the XFL make cities work and watching St. Louis go absolutely bananas for the St. Louis Battlehawks. And if they really do decide to go hubs, like, sorry, we're going to play all these games in Houston, Texas, in Chicago, in Orlando. It's just, guys, people like having something of their own to cheer for. Nobody's going to show up to a game in Orlando for a game between New York and LA. It's like, why should I care as an Orlandoan for 2 teams that are branded to not be from where I am? And so I don't get, if they do decide to do hubs, I don't get it. I really don't. Just from a fan perspective, I get it from a money perspective. You save a lot of travel. You don't have to worry about the upkeep of 7,000 stadiums. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but you get my point. But just from a fan perspective, I really hope they keep cities. So fingers crossed on that. And now to the part that I really, really wanted to get into, FCS football. FCS football is my favorite type of football. Most of the time, I'm going to choose college anything over professional anything just because college, they play, Professional sports leagues have gotten so business-like. Damian Lillard getting traded, for instance, it was such a business transaction. It was like, hey, I don't like you guys anymore, and I'm just going to not do anything until you trade me where I want to go. with college, and not saying that doesn't happen in college, but it feels more like, hey, let's go play some ball, right? And so I will always prefer college. And as a guy that went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, I will always prefer FCS football over FBS. The one bad thing about FCS football versus FBS is they're not one big trusted media poll. It depends person to person which one you go to. I always go to the Stats Perform FCS Top 25. A lot of people prefer the FCS Fans Nation Radio Top 25. Both companies do a lot of great work for the FCS community. Go check them both out on X/Twitter, on Instagram. I'm pretty sure they both have YouTubes. I know Fans Nation does. Have to imagine Stats Perform does in some way, shape, or form. But everybody is under fire this week because of one team. Probably the most controversial number 18 team to ever exist, the Montana Grizzlies. The Montana Grizzlies are not quite championship contenders, but they are quarterfinal, semifinal teams year in and year out. The Montana Grizzlies are what a lot of teams in that northwest corner of the United States want to be. If you are west of the Dakotas, you want to be Montana, you want to be Montana State. But Montana has fallen off of a cliff this year. I don't mean to sound dramatic. I don't like sounding dramatic, but quite frankly, it's true. Ferris State, a very good Division II team, and they can compete and would beat most FCS teams. They took Montana to the brink in Montana, 17-10. Montana pulled it out, and like I said, for most FCS teams, that's a fine result. Non-top 25, bottom half of FCS, hey, that's a decent win. That's fine. But if you consider yourself a top 10 team, if you consider yourself a playoff team, you have to be destroying teams at home. You have to be destroying Division II teams at home. It cannot happen any other way. And so already people were upset that Montana was staying in the rankings after that. And then this past week, they absolutely laid an egg on the road against Northern Arizona. They took the loss. Granted, it's a road loss, but Northern Arizona is not a team anybody in the top 25 should be losing to, much less one with deep playoff run aspirations like Montana. And so people were curious to see who would be replacing Montana in the rankings. Just how many votes was Montana still getting? It's like, are they close at all? Did people decide, no, we're abandoning them entirely? And then everybody opened their polls, whichever one they chose to look at. And like I said, for me, Stats Perform top 25. And they ended up coming out at number 18. I'm going to check this just to make sure. I know it was 18 in the coaches poll. Yeah, 18 in Stats Perform as well. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. Montana is a huge benefactor of what a lot of people call slot voting. If you are number 3 and you lose, you don't want to drop them all the way down if you lose somebody bad. It's like, okay, well, let's see, how about 15th? Even though they might have lost the worst team in the country. So slot voting is kind of an epidemic, and that's why I purposefully, when I try and create my own like top 25 type things that most of the time I don't release to the public. Most of the time I kind of keep to myself. It's like, hey, like, look what I made. I try not to do them very early in the season because preseason top 25s, preseason polls are stupid. I said it. You have no idea how these teams are going to play on the field, on the court, on the rink, whatever. In the rink, on the ice, one of those is right. You hockey fans will tell me which one in the comments. Let me know which one's right. So that's why I decided to put my own top 25 together. I'm going to try and do these week by week. I'm going to try to release them in a video. And so we're just going to go 1 through 25. Next week we might go 25 to 1. You guys let me know which one you prefer in the comments. So number 1, number 2 is pretty cut and dry. The two best teams for the last 2 or 3 years. One of them has been the best team in the FCS for the better part of my lifetime. South Dakota State at number 1 at 3-0. North Dakota State at number 2 at 3-0. Both of them open Missouri Valley football play this week. Both of them should win pretty handily. It'll be interesting to see if either of them lose before the playoffs. I know they both play Southern Illinois. One of them plays Southern Illinois on the road. I believe it's... We're going to take a moment, sorry. South Dakota State plays Southern Illinois on the road, so that might be a little bit interesting. North Dakota State takes them at home, I believe. So it's probably the toughest test for either of them, unless other than the Dakota Marker game. If we do have that game this year, I have to go back and check. So that'll be interesting to see if any of them fumble before the playoffs. Number 3, this is where I start to disagree with the Stats Perform poll and polls in general for the most part. I went ahead and gave that number 3 spot to Idaho. Idaho, they do have a loss, but it was against an FBS team, and they have a really impressive FBS win. They absolutely blew an FBS team out of the water on the road, and it wasn't some crappy one. It was one that people have a little bit of respect for. It's like, okay, you did that, and then they kept it close in their other FBS game. They've had a really tough schedule so far this year. Came out 3-1. So if North Dakota or South Dakota State drops a game, you have to wonder if Idaho gets in that top 2. We'll look into it. It's an interesting thing to check out. Now, Montana State is in a pretty similar spot. Now, they do have a loss, but they went blow for blow with South Dakota State on the road. Now, South Dakota State is the number 1 team in the nation when it comes to FCS football, and if you're going blow for blow with them, that means you're going to do pretty well. But you can't raise somebody for a loss. I take that back. You can, but North Dakota State and Idaho have not played South Dakota State, so we can't say for sure that Montana State did better than those 2 teams would have done against South Dakota State. So I'm keeping them there. I'm keeping them at number 4. William and Mary. William and Mary, they're 4-0, but they haven't really played anybody yet. That's the thing. So they're going to stay behind Montana State. They're going to stay behind Idaho. They're 4-0. They're 2-0 in conference. If they keep winning, eventually they have to move up. But it's one of those things. They didn't really play anybody of note yet, so it'll be interesting to see if their schedule becomes harder over the next couple weeks. But right now, I'm going to stick in that number 5 spot. And number 6, this is one I had trouble with. Holy Cross. They're 3-1. They are 3-1, and they were literally inches away from being 4-0 and having a FBS win over a Power 5 team. Now, granted, it is a Power 5 team in name only, but still, Boston College is a Power 5 team. Matthew Sluka, probably the front runner for the Walter Payton Award at this point, rightfully so. If I had a vote, and if we had to turn our votes today, he'd probably get my vote. So Holy Cross is a team to look out for. I really wanted to push them higher up. They've done so well. But it's just kind of, they're in that same boat with Montana State. It's just, you really looked good, but I don't have anywhere else to put you up. If they had beaten Boston College, they're definitely in that top 5. Probably at number 4, maybe even number 3. But if some butts were candy and nuts, we'd all have Merry Christmas, right? Sacramento State, they lost at Idaho, and so that they have to stay behind Idaho. They beat Troy Taylor and the Stanford Cardinal. They beat their former head coach. That's got to count for something. They've played really well, and it's another one of those things that if they keep winning, there's got to be somewhere for them to go at some point. Furman, 3-1. They looked good. Their only losses against FBS competition. Number 9, Southern Illinois. Talked about them a little bit. They have an FBS win over Northern Illinois. They escaped with a win against their rivals, Southeast Missouri State, in the War for the Wheel. They're 3-0. They face Missouri State in their Missouri Valley Football Conference opener. They check in at number 9. Delaware, 3-1. They've looked really good. If they keep going up, that little, that's 8-12 is really all right there. So if they keep winning, They're going to go up a couple spots. Incarnate Word. They're another team I had some trouble. I wasn't sure where I was going to put them. Originally, I had them 10th in front of Delaware. I ended up dropping them. Their only loss is against FBS competition. Now, before I continue, 24 out of 25 teams in my top 25 have their only losses are to either FBS teams or FCS top 25 teams. Fordham is the only one that has a loss to a non-top 25 FCS team, but we'll get there. Number 12, Villanova. Villanova is a team I am higher on than most people. I think they really looked good. They're 1-0 in conference. They're 3-1 on the season. I think they're a sneaky good team. They might make a quarterfinal if things go right. Interesting to look at. New Hampshire, 2-2, the first two-loss team. That's something that's going to be interesting to look out for. They always seem like they're right there. They're kind of in that discussion, but they don't end up really going anywhere. Be interesting if they crack through that. Number 14, North Dakota, another Missouri Valley football team. I have a feeling they're going to end up being one of the victims of the Missouri Valley Football Conference, cannibalizing each other a little bit. They're going to end up looking a little bit worse than they are, but we'll see kind of what happens there. Weber State, another two-loss team. They're 0-1 in the conference already, but in the Big Sky, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Big Sky, probably the second best, maybe first best conference in FCS football. We'll have to see what those rankings look like with Montana not being their best this year. North Carolina Central. This is where it's exciting because now we get into the teams that you don't really talk about week in, week out, year in, year out. North Carolina Central, Tennessee Martin, Western Carolina. Those are those next three. They're all really interesting teams. If any of them take off, it'll be fun to see if any of them can crack into that top 15, make people start talking about them. I'm really excited to see what they do. Youngstown State, same boat as North Dakota. Who can be that third? Who can be that fourth Missouri Valley football team? They're probably going to get like 5 teams in again. See if Youngstown State can be one of them to sneak in there. Central Arkansas, they're normally not that great. They're normally kind of trying to push in that next level. They found that next level. Can they keep it? Florida A&M at 22. We love seeing SWAC teams in the top 25. We absolutely love it. I'm so excited. I hope Florida A&M keeps this up. You know, they're probably going to be in the Celebration Bowl, so unfortunately probably won't be part of the FCS playoffs. I wish we could find a way to do the Celebration Bowl and let those teams in the playoff. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. Somebody get on that. Hopefully, the people that can make those decisions are watching this. Fingers crossed. Rhode Island, they're 2-2. They're 2-1 in conference. I wanted to talk about that real quick. 2-1 in conference. They have 3 games already in the CAA. That's pretty impressive. I wonder. We'll see what their non-conference slate looks like. I guess at the end of the year. We'll see. We'll get into that with Rhode Island later. Now, these are the 2 teams that I put in on my own that weren't in the Stats Perform one. Number 24, Fordham, the only team, like I said, the only team in the top 25 with a non-top 25 FCS loss. They've looked really, really good. And then number 25, Harvard. They're 2-0. They're in the Ivy League. They've played good so far. I want to put them in, show them the respect they deserve. They might have a short stay. We'll see. I dropped UC Davis and Montana. Montana, like I was talking about earlier, it's just a rough season for them. If they start winning again, I'm going to have to put them back in there. But until they show me they're the Montana of old, they're going to stay out. UC Davis, somebody I get bumped for Harvard. Harvard has proven so far that they're a pretty solid football team. If Harvard slips up, if UC Davis keeps doing what they're doing, I'm going to have to switch it. Eastern Illinois, Chattanooga, also, they're doing great work. If there were multiple people in this poll, they would be receiving votes. But they're another team to look out for in that playoff picture. That's the first ever Eli Hoover Sports Experience Top 25 going into Week 5. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Which ranking do you most agree with? Which ranking do you think I need to change absolutely right away? Put it down in a comment below. And I promise you a Taylor Swift take here at the end of this one. And here it is. I want Taylor Swift to be dating Travis Kelce long enough to where Taylor Swift fans change one thing about the game of football. And it's not going to be something stupid. Taylor Swift fans, Swifties, have this innate ability to change things for the better, or at least for the better for Swifties. They've gone to war against Ticketmaster, and they're starting to win. And so it's not going to be something stupid like, oh, wide receivers don't exist anymore, so Travis Kelce can get the ball more. They're going to be the ones to change the touchback fumble rule. They're going to be the ones to change something to make kickoffs finally safer and really cool. So I'm interested to see that. What rule do you think Swifties should try and change? Let me know. And thank you for sticking around for the first video on the Eli Hoover Sports Experience YouTube channel. Thank you guys. Once again, click that thumbs up, click the like button, click subscribe, click the bell to get notifications every time I post a video and go live. Leave a comment. How do you think the USFL XFL merger is going to go, or anything else I talked about today? Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and have a great weekend.